at it. I just think Dallas is a limit they're not willing to go by. I wasn't expecting Dallas to be busy. Duchesne wanted to stay. It got done. Ben wanted to stay. It got done. And you forget he had 50 points in the regular season last year. Granlund signed for 3 times 7. I think his ask for Dallas was just under that. I think they would have loved to have kept him, but they just couldn't do it. I heard they had no interest in moving Lyubushkin. They felt that he was a good depth player for them. I believe they felt there was a market for Dumba, and we'll see where that goes. You know, there is another extension they can do, and that's Thomas Harley. We keep focusing on Robertson, and someone said to me, you're forgetting a guy there. And that's a guy who looked pretty good on the Four Nations team, and you assume will be on the Olympic team on Harley. So it's not just Robertson that's going to be a trick for them to fill. It's going to be Harley too. So I'm not surprised that this was not a busy offseason for Dallas. Look, they know Radek Faksa. They brought him back. They kept Blackwell. Now it's negotiating time. It's Robertson and it's Harley, and those are their 2 biggest off-season things. You know, Gulletson, the thing about Gulletson is I always remember Ron Lancaster. Ron Lancaster was a great player in the CFL, and his first 2 years as head coach of the Saskatchewan Roughriders, he went 4-28. And so, some players, they're good players, they can't be coaches. And he went into TV for a while, and he came back and he coached Edmonton and then Hamilton, and he was hugely successful. And I once asked him about it, and he's like, I had no idea. Like with 2020 hindsight, I had no idea. And I wouldn't say that Glenn Gulletson had no idea, but when I see a guy come back to a head coaching job, 5-6 years after, 7 years after it happened, I think of a guy like Ron Lancaster. What did you know? What do you realize you didn't know then that you do know now? What has your next experience taught you? And, the thing about Lancaster is he just coached with 2 of the best players in the NHL. And those are 2 players that have a big say in what happens. And the coach has to be the boss, and the coach has to lay down the law, but it doesn't mean you can't learn from how to make it work with 2 of the best players in the league. And the other thing too is the Dallas team that Gulletson coached years ago isn't the under control, good ownership model that they have now. I think like Pierre DeBoer is a heck of a coach, but it's clear he has an expiration, and the expiration came there, and this team needed a new voice. And I thought it was really smart that they found a spot for Neil Graham on the bench, because otherwise they would have lost him. And I'm curious to see, how this goes over the next few years, because this isn't the last time the Stars are going to be asked.
That line I heard, I believe it was someone in baseball. It said, the more time I spend around the game, the more I realize how little I know about it.
I'm like that with broadcasting.
Yes. Yeah, that's it though. Everything else you've got down to a T.
Everything else I've got figured out. No problem. No problem.
Okay, the Minnesota Wild. The shackles are off. Out from under the LTIR weight. There was some depth signings they've made so far. Cal Peterson for some depth in goal. There was the trade that brought them Vladimir Tarasenko, but the big focus for them internally, Kirill Kaprizov and Marco Rossi. Where do things stand there?
So, on Kaprizov, Bill Guerin has always maintained a confidence, and I wouldn't expect anything less. Guerin is always confident outwardly, and I wouldn't expect there to be any difference. I'm really curious to see when this gets done, what the number is going to be, because I remember we talked earlier this year about how there were people that felt that Kaprizov would go for the biggest number in the league, like even potentially more than a McDavid. And not necessarily, Kaprizov's a hell of a player. I don't know that anybody should be paid more than Connor McDavid, but everybody's situation is their own. And we kind of talked about it with Alex Tuck in the Buffalo segment, right? That your situation in Buffalo for Tuck drives up his value. Kaprizov's situation in Minnesota drives up his value. So we're all curious to see this number, although again, Guerin and the owner there, Craig Leopold, have said they will pay it. But it's one of those things, like some of these other ones, with each day it doesn't get done. You know, people are like, okay, let's get this done here. Rossi, you know, there's no arbitration for Rossi. He's not eligible. There's lots of time here. You know, the one thing is that as we record this podcast, and again, I always live in fear of this, I say this and then something gets announced, but they didn't appear close on a contract. You know, it's been reported that Rossi's ask was around Boldy, 7x7. He's a 60-point center. But the Wild don't see it the same way. And, you know, because of what happened to Rossi in the playoffs where he got moved down the lineup, his representation doesn't want to go short term, because if that happens again, it could really hurt his earning potential. So right now they're a little bit stuck, right? You know, I think when the season starts next year, Rossi will be put in position to score again. It's just, it benefits the Wild and it benefits the player. Whatever they agree to contract-wise, assuming he stays there and he's not traded, it doesn't make sense for the Wild to bury Rossi because they need him to win. And also, you don't want to bury him because eventually, if you're not going to keep him, you want to move him. So I could see a situation where he comes back, they figure out something, and the recognition and understanding is they're there to shine him up. You know, I don't think a trade was ever really close. I don't think the Wild got anything close to what they were looking for. And I think Bill Guerin is honest when he says, I'm not making my team worse. I'm either getting a player that helps me right away or something I know that will get me a player right away. To me, the most interesting thing about Rossi is that this is a league that is crying for centers. Look at all of the teams who are looking for 2Cs. And Rossi, in theory, can play that role. And I think the reason is, who was Florida's 2C? It's Sam Bennett. So whenever somebody wins the Stanley Cup,